Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to wisdom, warrior Manjushri. Homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in 1,000,000 eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. In the words of my perfect teacher, we are now teaching the refuge section within the uncommon preliminaries. In the refuge section, the refuge trainings have not yet been completed. Let me explain next. Once one has abandoned taking refuge in the three jewels, then even if one practices whatever profound and mysterious great Dharma, one cannot be counted among the ranks of Buddhists. As Venerable Atisha said, inner and outer paths are distinguished by refuge, although among non-Buddhist paths, there are also many teachings that rely on avoiding negative actions, meditating on deities, practicing winds and channels, etc., to attain common accomplishments. But because they do not know how to take refuge in the three jewels, they remain thousands of miles away from the path of liberation. They can never attain liberation from samsara, as mentioned before, since we have already taken refuge in the three jewels. Even when facing life-threatening danger, we cannot abandon the three jewels. Once we abandon the three jewels, no matter how one practices profound and mysterious teachings in other behaviors, or whatever appearances one puts on in behavior, in reality, one cannot be counted among the ranks of Buddhists at all. In the past, Venerable Atisha was an incomparable great Pandita who had no equal in either Eastern or Western India. When he came to Tibetan areas, he mainly taught 2 points. First, outer and inner paths are distinguished by refuge. Other things, such as clothing, cannot necessarily distinguish them. Their transmission of precepts also cannot necessarily distinguish them, because non-Buddhist paths actually also have many practitioners of virtue. In our current world's various religions, on the surface they also practice virtue and have many good appearances. They even have some quite rare teachings. Previously, when Venerable Atisha was in India, Tibetan areas sent many people before and after, especially King's Bodhi Light and Wisdom Light. To invite Venerable Atisha to Tibetan areas, they paid great costs. Once, a translator accompanied Venerable Atisha on pilgrimages to many places in India, east, south, west, and north. Once, beside the Ganges River, they encountered Venerable Atisha and they met a Brahmin. This Brahmin was an elderly Brahmin. This Brahmin, beside the Ganges River, found the corpse of a child, a young person. According to history, it was probably a young person. After finding the corpse, he first washed it in the Ganges River. After washing it clean, he placed it beside himself. Then he began to sit in meditation. After sitting for a while, the corpse from before had come back to life. The old Brahmin from before had died. After dying, the living person began to get up, then threw the old Brahmin's corpse into the river. At that time, the translator from Tibetan areas found this quite extraordinary. He asked Venerable Atisha what was happening. Before the old Brahmin was alive, later the young person was alive. Later it was said he was a non-Buddhist practitioner, the non-Buddhist practice of reviving in a new body, what we usually call transference into another body, just like what was described in the biography of Mapa, the translator's son, transferring one's consciousness into another person's body. The body must not be injured and no organs can be damaged. Into such a complete body, one can transfer one's consciousness. Later, that young Brahmin just left. This shows that non-Buddhist paths actually not only recite mantras, keep precepts, practice virtue, etc. Such behaviors are very numerous. They even have various miraculous powers completely beyond our expectations. For example, swimming in water like a fish, flying in the sky like a bird, passing through mountain rocks without obstruction. Many such extraordinary common accomplishments exist. But in reality, if they have not truly taken refuge in the three jewels, then they are completely unconnected to the path of liberation. We who are present here now, if we merely seek fame, status and wealth in samsara, then this has no meaning. The happiness of this life is not very important. What's most crucial is permanently escaping the three realms of samsara. This point is very important. So why do we take refuge? for those who take refuge in the three jewels first, attaining liberation from the three realms of samsara oneself. Such a goal is very important. If you want liberation, not taking refuge in the three jewels truly won't work. I previously saw in a Chinese text called Precious Mirror of the Lotus Lineage of Mount Lu that it said, the Buddha said, all sentient beings who do not take refuge in the three jewels will fall into the three lower realms for endless eons. This states that the Buddha has said, all sentient beings who do not take refuge in the three jewels will fall into the three lower realms for many lifetimes and countless eons. The source of this Buddha's teaching should be the Sutra on the Mahayana principle of 6 paramitas. The Sutra on the Mahayana principle of 6 paramitas also contains the same passage. Taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is the skillful means to escape suffering. If one does not take refuge, what use is regret? So truly, if we want to escape samsara, the best method is taking refuge in Buddha, taking refuge in Dharma, taking refuge in Sangha, as mentioned before, in our Tibetan areas indeed, whether great or small, elderly or young people, men, women, young and old, all especially value this point. People should have very devout hearts from childhood and recite refuge prayers especially often. Just recently, an old Lama in our academy passed away. I heard he also recited many refuge prayers, but I'm not very clear about the specific number I know about some of his other recitations. For example, he recited 600 million Avalokiteshvara mantras, 100,000 recitations of Confession of Downfalls to the 35 Buddhas, and 1 million recitations of the King of Aspiration prayers. His name was Lama Tendro. Probably many people in the academy knew him. When I came to the academy, he was already in the academy. It's said he might have been here from the very beginning of the academy. He passed away recently. When he passed away, he seemed to be going from this place to another place. He had no fear in his heart whatsoever. Indeed, sometimes we see some practitioners leaving this world. They truly have a very free and carefree feeling. If it were another person, if I were about to die, then the terror and fear in the heart would be quite severe. But these people practiced virtue their entire lives. He was 84 years old. Last year I saw in Khenpo Sharab Zangpo's biography, when he came up from the valley, he came up together with him. I saw in the drawings that he wasn't so old at that time. It was already close to 20 years ago. 20 years ago he probably wouldn't have been so old. But now, indeed, he was holding a walking stick and was particularly old. When we first came, he wasn't particularly old, I think, as practitioners, truly for an entire lifetime. As for him, it seems he wasn't particularly intelligent in study and contemplation, but in recitation and in his usual meditation, he still worked very hard. Basically, day and night, especially at night, he slept very little. According to some Dharma teachers who lived next to him, he was very diligent. So I think whether we recite refuge prayers or practice the 500,000 preliminaries, I hope all the Dharma friends present here all came to this world the same way. But when leaving this world, some people return empty-handed, some return fully loaded. There are truly two kinds of people, so everyone should pay attention to this aspect. To truly attain liberation from samsara, one must take refuge in the three jewels. If one has not taken refuge in the three jewels, then liberation cannot be attained at all. Venerable Atisha knew and saw everything about the vast ocean-like sutra and tantra teachings. Nothing was unknown to him, nothing was unseen by him, but this venerable elder, considering beginners. First and foremost, the emphasis must be placed on refuge. Therefore, in all Dharma assemblies, he solely taught refuge. For this reason, people called him the Refuge Pandita. When Venerable Atisha first came to our Tibetan areas, at that time, after King Langdama's persecution of Buddhism, nearly 100 years had passed. During the later propagation period, Venerable Atisha came to Tibetan areas. It should have been in the year 1040 CE, when Venerable Atisha was 59 years old. He went from India to Nepal, stayed in Nepal for 1 year, then later came to Tibetan areas, starting first from Gari, then gradually spreading the teachings throughout all Tibetan areas. Although Venerable Atisha also gave empowerments and transmitted secret teachings in Tibetan areas, he taught many uncommon pith instructions and essential teachings to those with karmic connection. But most importantly, with all the faithful, he emphasized the propagation of refuge and karmic cause and effect. So in some places, people called him the Refuge Pandita. In some places, they called him the Karma Pandita. He constantly taught the principles of karmic cause and effect. Some people often said to Venerable Atisha, "You are such a renowned great Pandita from India. When you came to Tibetan areas, people all say you are the Refuge Pandita. Calling you the Refuge Pandita is an insult to you. A Pandita from India, so proficient in Sutra and Tantra teachings, has come here. Refuge is not a particularly simple preliminary practice, so this doesn't seem very good for you." Some asked him this way. When they asked him this, he himself said all Sutra and Tantra Buddhist teachings, their most basic and fundamental point is refuge. People calling me the Refuge Pandita. This is especially great praise for me. I am extremely joyful. I will continuously propagate the refuge teachings. So the refuge teachings are indeed also, for us Dharma friends present, when practicing ourselves, we must build a solid foundation. Otherwise, merely wearing red robes physically and having your head completely shaved does not necessarily make one a true Buddhist. Some Buddhists don't even have respect, joy, or reverence for the three jewels. How can they be called monastics? They don't even meet the basic requirements of refuge. It's particularly laughable and shameful, so this aspect definitely deserves attention. Therefore, as Buddhists who have already entered the path of liberation, from now on, even when facing life-threatening danger, we absolutely cannot abandon refuge and the refuge precepts. Refuge and refuge precepts, not abandoning them even when facing life-threatening danger. This point must be put into actual practice. As it says in the Buddhist sutras, whoever takes refuge in Buddha becomes a true householder. Actually, this is the Mahaparinirvana Sutra I quoted earlier. It's just a different translation. Actually, the same. Whoever takes refuge in Buddha becomes a true upasaka, a true householder, merely taking refuge in the three jewels. Some people say, I don't want to receive the householder precepts, I just want to take refuge in the three jewels. Actually, if one has truly taken refuge in the three jewels, one has already become a genuine householder. At no time can one take refuge in other deities. At no time can one take refuge in the various Indras, Brahmas, and other deities of non-Buddhist paths. Take refuge in the true Dharma and abandon the mind of harm. After taking refuge in the true Dharma, one absolutely cannot harm any sentient being. Of course, we might unintentionally. Because our sentient being's anger is quite frightening, so sometimes we might. But if you directly or indirectly harm some beings, immediately repent. One absolutely cannot kill sentient beings. This is precept of the refuge teachings. Take refuge in the noble Sangha and should not associate with non-Buddhists. If after taking refuge in the Sangha, with non-Buddhist followers, with those who don't believe in karma, with those who, though not disbelieving, but frequently curse their own teachers or blaspheme the true Dharma, one also cannot associate with such people. If one associates with them, those near vermilion become red, those near ink become black. Gradually being influenced by them, one's own view and conduct will also become tainted. After this, ultimately one will also distance oneself from the true Dharma of refuge. Therefore, we must devotedly take refuge. This will always bring us a kind of happiness. If a person faithfully takes refuge in Buddha, the Tathagata does not deceive. This should be taught in the Lotus Sutra. If person faithfully takes refuge in Buddha, the Tathagata does not deceive. If we wholeheartedly take refuge in Buddha, take refuge in Dharma, take refuge in Sangha, karma does not deceive. The Tathagata, the three jewels, will always grant us blessings and accomplishments. The Flower Ornament Sutra also teaches, all guides the true Dharma and the assembly of Bodhisattvas. The noble Sangha, ocean of merit, all should be respectfully honored. All guides, the Buddha Dharma, and the Sangha, these three are actually the ocean of all merit. We should respectfully and joyfully take refuge and pray, also frequently visualize and contemplate. In this way, directly or indirectly, we will obtain the boundless accomplishments and merit from their mind streams. Nowadays, some people consider themselves followers of the three jewels, yet they actually have not the slightest bit of reverence for Buddhist scriptures, stupas, Buddha statues, etc. They actually treat these as ordinary material goods and engage in buying and selling them, even using them as collateral, etc. This is what's called enjoying the wealth of the three jewels. The transgression is extremely severe. Nowadays, those who appear on the surface to be Buddhists and monastics consider themselves followers of the three jewels. Yet toward Buddhist scriptures, Buddha statues, stupas, and other supports of the three jewels, they have not even the tiniest bit of reverence. They even frequently use these three jewels objects for buying and selling as merchandise. This fault is extremely great. Previously, in the Sutra on the Ocean-like Samadhi of the visualization of the Buddha, there was King Udayana at that time, because Buddha Shakyamuni went to the heaven of the 33 to teach Dharma for his mother. He constantly missed him greatly. When he returned, he specially made a golden statue like Buddha Shakyamuni, such a body statue, to welcome him. When welcoming, the real Buddha bowed to the golden Buddha statue. The golden Buddha statue also manifested various miraculous displays and bowed to the real Buddha. Later the Buddha gave the prophecy, "After my parinirvana through such body statues, countless sentient beings will be benefited." From that time onward, we have had objects of prostration in this world. Although the Buddha has already passed into parinirvana, at that time the Buddha already prophesied, "For us sentient beings of the degenerate age in the future, there are such supports of the three jewels." Therefore, such supports of the three jewels absolutely cannot be used for one's livelihood or as trade goods. This is unreasonable. I think I've taught this before. In Venerable Jigme Lingpa's Treasury of Precious Qualities, both the auto-commentary and verses teach, if we buy and sell Buddha statues and stupas, this is called incomparable transgression, destroying supports of the three jewels. This is called incomparable transgression. So how do we repent? First, we must create more than double the body statues. For example, if I previously destroyed 100 yen worth of scriptures or 100 yen worth of Buddha statues, then I use 200 yen to restore them. If you previously destroyed scriptures, print scriptures worth 200 yuan. If I previously destroyed 100 yuan worth of Buddha statues, I must make Buddha statues worth 200 yuan. Then on this foundation, perform repentance in order to achieve purification. Therefore, in the future, we Dharma friends present should also think for ourselves, have I previously destroyed Buddha statues or stupas? If so, quickly repent before dying. Otherwise, the transgression might cause retribution even in this very life. Previously, I saw in a book called Complete Works of Anshi that it said there was a person in an incense shop selling incense. Initially, he used 3 gold pieces to buy a sandalwood statue of Avalokiteshvara. Later, the value of sandalwood became higher and higher. If he made this Avalokiteshvara statue into sandalwood, if he destroyed it, he could earn a lot of money. He could get 16 gold pieces. Later, he prepared to destroy this Avalokiteshvara statue. At that time, one of his servants disagreed, but after all, he was just a servant and didn't listen to him. Later, it seems their shop destroyed this Avalokiteshvara statue. After destroying it, in less than a day, the servant went to work elsewhere. At this time, the entire shop caught fire and everyone died. So in some treatises, it teaches that the fault of destroying the 3 jewels is extremely severe. In my life, I have also seen, for example, burning Dharma halls, burning Buddha statues, deliberately destroying Buddha statues. Such people experience extremely severe karmic ripening in this very life. So regarding this aspect, everyone should pay attention. Previously there was a text called Maudgalyayana asking about 500 minor and major faults in the Vinaya. In this scripture, it asks what kind of faults there are in buying and selling Buddha statues. At that time, the Buddha said it's like buying and selling one's parents. The fault is extremely great. So regarding this aspect, we should pay attention. Furthermore, except when painting or carving Buddha statues, when measurements are needed for proper creation, at other times, pointing fingers at Buddha statues and making arbitrary comments, this is not dignified, that is not beautiful. These faults are also quite severe. Therefore, we absolutely must not nitpick at these Buddha statues. For example, if you want to create Buddha statues or carve Buddha statues, in this process perhaps the size of the entire head, the measurements of the whole dimensions. In this respect, you might have to make some evaluations unavoidably. At other times, you absolutely cannot. I think we taught in great commentary on the aspiration to be reborn in the pure realm of Sukhavati. Before, there was a person who said a Buddha statue was missing a finger, so he called it the broken finger Buddha. Later, his own finger was also broken, and for 500 lifetimes or however many lifetimes, he also became broken-fingered. Some people in Han regions nowadays don't understand Buddhism. This is a fat Buddha, thin Buddha, tall Buddha, using such terms to address them. This is not allowed. We cannot do this even to people, much less Buddha statues, which are supports of the three jewels. Therefore, regarding the naming of Buddha statues, we absolutely cannot. Oh, this Padmasambhava is ugly. This Buddha Shakyamuni is ugly. How can there be such talk? Buddha Shakyamuni, Padmasambhava, and all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas all have perfect, excellent signs. We absolutely cannot say this. Other treatises also say the craftsmanship of this Buddha statue, that is to say its technical skill, should be attributed to the creator. If you feel this Buddha statue is not very dignified, you cannot say the Buddha statue is not dignified. You should say the craftsmanship of this Buddha statue's creator. The technique in that factory is not good, or if someone made it, that person's technique is not good. In this way, you haven't said the Buddha is not dignified. So many people now say, wow, so ugly. Such an ugly Avalokiteshvara. Wow, so ugly. We absolutely cannot speak this way. This aspect must be noted. Otherwise, one can easily create great negative karma. This is both unnecessary and not allowed. It is also not allowed to place books containing Buddhist scripture texts directly on the ground, stepping over scriptures or licking one's fingers with saliva when turning pages, etc. All these disrespectful behaviors carry very serious transgressions. The Buddha also personally spoke in the Buddhist scriptures, "In the final 500 years I manifest as written form. Think of that as me, and at that time show respect." That is to say, regarding scriptures. This was also taught before. Most people are still acceptable. When we usually place scriptures, we should place some relatively clean cloth or clothing underneath. Some people who don't understand karma place scriptures on shoes, place scriptures on seat cushions. I think I mentioned before, when His Holiness went to America, once when teaching the great perfection of Manjushri, during the empowerment, they got up to receive the empowerment. Some people placed the Dharma texts. We found it particularly frightening to see, because each person had a round seat cushion. Then they placed this under the seat cushion, with the seat cushion pressing on the Dharma text. Then they went up to receive empowerment. Then we came down saying, "You can't place it here." Sit. Some of them had the attitude of, "It's fine, it's fine." That kind of attitude. For individuals, such particularly bad behavior should be noted. Now, most people are probably a bit better. Previously, many people's respect for scriptures. Even when turning pages, we cannot lick saliva, like when counting money, then start turning pages. This is very disrespectful to scriptures. Why? Because the Buddha already said in the final 500 years, he has already manifested as written form. The Buddha also said in the Great Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, Dharma is the Buddha's body. If you make offerings to Dharma, you are making offerings to Buddha. This is taught in the Great Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. You can verify this, so Dharma as taught in the scriptures is indeed very important. Sutra of the Buddha's skillful means in repaying kindness also says, Buddha takes Dharma as teacher. Buddha is born from Dharma. Dharma is Buddha's mother. In Han regions, there's a text called Records of the Three Treasures throughout the successive dynasties, which also says Dharma is Buddha's mother. Buddha is born from Dharma. Buddhas of the three times all make offerings to Dharma. So we should know that Buddha Dharma is written text. Conversely, written text also contains the teachings of Buddha Dharma. Why does the Buddha say we should be so respectful? Because we are born from Dharma. We people present should also understand clearly. In our mind streams, whether it's bodhicitta or renunciation, All these qualities actually originate from Dharma. If there were no Dharma and no transmission from teachers, how could we have such precious qualities in our mind streams? The Buddha already passed into parinirvana over 2,500 years ago, but our lineage, all the wisdom of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity that the Buddha had in those days now remains perfectly intact. This is due to the blessing power of Dharma. Some time ago, when discussing with a Dharma teacher, I said, when a person comes to this world, their greatest contribution should be writing some good books. If they're bad books, they might destroy the entire world. We all know this. If they leave behind some good books, their contribution to humanity is truly enormous. It's not like constructing some building or making something else, like Venerable Longchenpa, Lama Tsongkhapa, Mipham Rinpoche. Look how they left us such precious Dharma treasures in their time. We later generations can. Earlier generations plant trees. Later generations enjoy the shade. We can enjoy this happily. So here it also says, in our worldly conventions there's such a saying, Buddha statues cannot be placed on Buddhist scriptures. People have this saying. When we generally arrange a shrine, we also put scriptures above and Buddha statues below. The positions of Buddha statues and scriptures. Because scriptures are extremely important, like more important than Buddha statues, so generally you can probably see this too. In many shrine halls in Tibetan areas, generally speaking, how do we arrange them right? This is still on top. Can you see, don't you place Buddha statues on top of scriptures? This doesn't create a very big contradiction, of course, but generally it's like this. Among all Buddha statues, Buddhist scriptures and stupas, Buddhist scriptures have the function of showing the principles of what to adopt and abandon, and continuing the wisdom life of Buddha Dharma. They have not the slightest difference from the real Buddha. Even compared to the Buddha, one could say they surpass rather than fall short. They have extremely great merit and power. It seems the Kshitigarbha 10 Wheels Mahayana Sutra teaches, like encountering a precious vase, removing poverty and gaining wealthy happiness. If one encounters a precious vase, it can dispel poverty and obtain wealthy happiness. Likewise, encountering Buddha Dharma destroys delusions and realizes Bodhi, just like a poor person encountering gold or a wish-fulfilling vase. From then on, they no longer need to experience the suffering of poverty. Similarly, a person who is spiritually extremely impoverished in this world, after encountering Buddha Dharma, from then on enjoys it inexhaustibly. Whatever they wish for, they obtain. So spiritually, they have already become wealthy. If one becomes spiritually wealthy, even without much worldly conditioned wealth, one lives very happily. Therefore, we should know that Buddha Dharma is particularly important. We must respect the Dharma jewel. In summary, if we take refuge in Buddha Dharma, as was said that day, even one word or one sentence, in the future we must make offerings and show respect for Buddha statues, even fragments and above. Even seeing the tiniest scrap of waste paper from Buddhist scriptures, we must show respect. As Buddhists, we must definitely pay attention to this point. Otherwise, we now hear that in some places, there's no respect at all for the supports of the three jewels. It's uncomfortable to even hear about. Even more worth mentioning is most people nowadays treat Vajra, bells and Vajras as ordinary objects and don't consider them as supports of the three jewels. Especially some people in Tibetan areas who frequently go to villages to recite prayers. They consider hand drums and bells and Vajras as merely indispensable when reciting liturgies, but they don't know that they are supports of the three jewels. They are just indispensable when conducting such liturgies. Actually, bells and Vajras are also very important for practitioners. How are they important? In reality, the Vajra represents the Buddha's 5 wisdoms, because the 5-pronged Vajra, especially the Vajra, represents the 5 wisdoms. The Vajra bell also likewise possesses the deity's countenance. According to the lower tantras, like Kriya Tantra and Charya Tantra, this represents Vairocana. The Buddha statue on top of the Vajra bell is Vairocana. Then in the upper tantras, like Mahayoga, Anuyoga, and other inner tantras, this Buddha statue is called Vajradhatvishvari. Therefore, it possesses the Buddha's bodily form. Then, on the Vajra bell, there are the scriptural forms of the true seed syllables of the 8 great consorts, among the supports of the 3 jewels in the lotus above. There are mantras of the 4 consorts and 4 dakinis of the noble riches, 8 syllables. Furthermore, its clear sound represents the Buddha's voice of teaching Dharma. Therefore, we know that the Vajra bell completely possesses the symbols of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind wisdom. The 3 supports, especially the entire mandala wheel of Vajrayana, is upon it. Everything is complete and intact, and it's also called the sign of uncommon samaya. Generally speaking, many Vajra mandalas in our Vajrayana, for example, wrathful and peaceful mandalas, and the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities mandala, all of these can be symbolically complete in the bell and Vajra. Therefore, generally, our Vajrayana samayas cannot be interrupted. So people who have received empowerment generally have a Vajrayana Vajra bell and Vajra. If the Vajra bell and Vajra are too large, it might be inconvenient to carry everywhere, but some of us have symbolic bells and Vajras on our prayer beads. These are Vajrayana Samaya objects. Not destroying Samaya has many necessities. We also often say mantras and mudras should not be interrupted. If mantras and mudras are not interrupted, it's also to mark constant visualization and constant reverence for Vajrayana ritual implements. They are also samaya objects and symbols. If we treat them lightly, there will of course be serious transgressions. Therefore, we must constantly show respect and make offerings. This is the training of refuge. Next, we'll teach the benefits of refuge. Taking refuge in the 3 jewels is the foundation of all true Dharma. Anyone who merely takes refuge can plant the seed of liberation. Staying away from negative actions and increasing virtuous Dharma, so refuge is the foundation of all merit. Just as Venerable Atisha taught, cause oneself and others to take refuge. One must definitely take refuge oneself. If one hasn't taken refuge, merely reciting, merely doing some virtuous deeds in appearance, the merit is not great. If one hasn't taken refuge, one cannot receive any precepts. It is the root of all precepts and the source of all merit. Those who take refuge in the 3 jewels are temporarily protected by Dharma, protectors of virtue. All wishes are fulfilled as desired, constantly not separated from the light of the 3 jewels. Because those who take refuge in the 3 jewels are temporarily protected by all virtuous Dharma protectors. Dharma protectors constantly give you special care and special protection. Those who take refuge in the 3 jewels constantly stay away from all demonic hosts. They encounter spiritual teachers and always remain inseparable from the light of the 3 jewels. They can also recall past lives and obtain happiness in this life and future lives, ultimately achieving Buddhahood and so forth. The merits and benefits are immeasurable. Therefore, 70 stanzas on refuge also teaches, though all beings can receive precepts, without refuge they cannot be obtained. Every sentient being can receive precepts and also has the opportunity to receive precepts, but without refuge, it's impossible to obtain them. In bhikshu vows, novice vows, householder vows, and all individual liberation vows, refuge is an indispensable, fundamental, and sole condition. Without refuge, you cannot receive novice monk or novice nun vows. Receiving householder vows is also impossible, and receiving bhikshu and bhikshuni vows is even more impossible. Moreover, in Mahayana Dharma, that was just regarding Hinayana individual liberation vows. In Mahayana Dharma, whether generating supreme bodhicitta or Vajrayana empowerments, etc., all of these must also have refuge as a prerequisite for any Vajrayana empowerment or any practice. It's impossible to transmit profound instructions to someone without refuge. In Mahayana, receiving bodhisattva vows is impossible without ever having received refuge vows, so refuge is extremely important. Even merely taking the 8 one-day precepts for one day first, and indispensably, is refuge. Therefore, refuge is said to be the root of all precepts and merit. In Han regions, people also frequently speak of 3 refuges and 5 precepts, but the true meaning and significance and merits of refuge, in these aspects, except for a very few people, some Buddhists who have truly taken refuge for many years are still very confused. In the future, we especially need to propagate the principles related to refuge. For many sentient beings, this should be most meaningful for oneself and others. I often think that if we cannot teach Madhyamaka or great perfection, particularly high and great teachings, at the most basic level, letting many people uphold refuge vows and making them believe in the three jewels, this point should not be impossible. This time, some individual monastics and householders, when you return, frequently tell people around you about these kinds of merits. They are very pitiful. They come to this world only knowing about killing, sexual misconduct, and stealing. They are very skilled in creating negative karma, but regarding practicing virtue, they are basically vague, particularly blind, and extremely ignorant. In such a world, sometimes we can also understand, because in today's society, every day is spent rushing about for temporary worldly living. The purpose is also like this. There's nothing else besides this. In school, what do teachers teach you? Happiness in this life. They don't know at all that besides today. There's tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and many long days ahead. The teachers themselves are confusedly talking nonsense on the podium. Really, it's like this. There's no way around it. So for students, it's the blind leading the blind. There's no way around it. The blind leading the blind. In the end, they still fall into the abyss. This is the inevitable law. So sometimes seeing many students and teachers in schools, honestly, it can only be like this. Because in such a confused world, there's only confused education. What's the goal of people who emerge from confused education? For eating and drinking. If it's for eating and drinking, just as Sakya Pandita said in his Ordinary Wisdom, there's no difference from hairless pigs. Old pigs have hair on their bodies. But pig hair doesn't seem to be very much, not like yaks. Then Sakya Pandita said about ignorant people, every day they only have the one goal of eating and drinking. There's no difference from pigs. His designation is also like this. So I think in this world, these people who don't even understand refuge, on certain levels from Buddhist values, they are truly extremely pitiful, but there's also no way around it. So many people, besides simple survival for the next few decades, don't have, let alone far-sighted vision. They don't even have thoughts and goals spanning hundreds of years. So I think Buddhism, such great, vast thought and wisdom, I very much want to exchange with many people and transmit it to those with karmic connection. In this way, it would also benefit others if we use money. For example, if you give someone 1 or 2 million, for them, there may not necessarily be time to enjoy it. Even if there is, it's only a kind of temporary benefit for a few decades. If you truly plant the seed of liberation in their mind stream, then this kind of benefit far exceeds money, far exceeds status, far exceeds any other worldly benefit. So as people who have generated Mahayana Bodhicitta, after knowing the merits of taking refuge in the three jewels, we should always be able to share these principles we understand with those who have karmic connection. If you want to give empowerments, do you have the capability in this area? Indeed, sometimes when people ask me to give empowerments, I think to myself, if I give empowerments, have I recited the deity mantras? Have I received them myself, whether in dreams or in visionary states? Previously, maybe 20 years ago, I gave empowerments to others. But this was completely an illusion. I just used a photo to touch their heads. Then they thought it was an empowerment. This is not empowerment. True empowerment. In the Guhya Garbha Tantra, it teaches 4 conditions and 2 causes. How can there be? This is not such an easy matter. But if you asked me to teach refuge, I would also teach it in my own mind stream. Indeed, in this world, nothing else is important. Taking refuge in the three jewels is very important. I have such certainty in my heart. If someone asked me to teach refuge, I would definitely be overjoyed. Come, I'll immediately teach you refuge. Right? Is it like this? Not to mention generating faith in the merits of the three jewels and taking refuge. Even just hearing Buddha's name or connecting with any of the supports of Buddha's body, speech, and mind. The supports of body, speech, and mind refer to Buddha statues, Buddhist scriptures, and stupas. Forming even a small virtuous connection with any one of these will also plant the seed of liberation in one's mind stream and ultimately attain nirvana, just like what was quoted as scriptural authority in The Great Chariot, a a commentary on finding rest in the nature of the mind. Making even a small connection with Buddha has vast merit. I forgot. I can't recite the scriptural authority word for word, but it teaches this. Truly, whether with Buddha statues or Buddhist scriptures, whatever small karmic connection one forms with the three jewels, this is particularly great virtue. In Han regions, there's a text called Essential Brief Records of Miracles related to the three jewels, which also says, in Shakyamuni, Tathagata's degenerate age, hearing the three jewels and generating a little faith. In the degenerate age of Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings, if you hear the names of the three jewels or Buddha's name and generate even a small amount of faith in them, the karmic obscurations of 3 lifetimes are completely eliminated, and in this life you will definitely see all the noble ones. We must definitely go to prostrate to Buddha, prostrate to scriptures, prostrate to the Sangha. The supports of the three jewels are particularly supreme objects, planting seeds of liberation in the mind stream. There's such a story in the Vinaya. Previously there was a pig that was being chased by a dog. Then unknowingly it had already circumambulated the stupa. Surely this dog also had no intention of circumambulating the stupa. As for the pig, it also didn't have any. Then they unknowingly made one circle. Through this virtue, that benefactor Srijata, when benefactor Srijata was 100 years old, he wanted to ordain in a monastery. Many arhats couldn't see that he had virtue for liberation. Many people ask us, do I have the karmic connection for ordination? Do I have the karmic connection for liberation? We can see even less. Even arhats couldn't see whether he would achieve liberation after ordination. Later, they wouldn't let him ordain. They wouldn't let him ordain because he was a 100-year-old elderly person. Just like now in some monasteries in Han regions, they fundamentally don't accept elderly people. They probably discovered he had no seeds of liberation. Here we occasionally discover individual people. Later he was particularly distressed and went to the Buddha, who observed, "Oh, if he ordains now, he will attain arhathood." What was his virtue? When he became a pig and was chased by a dog, he then circumambulated this stupa. It had no intention to circumambulate. We are completely different. When we see a stupa, you think, oh, there's merit, so you go circumambulate 3 times. This kind is circumambulating with virtuous mind, but these animals are not like this. There are also the 7 men for testing, the first batch to ordain in Tibetan areas. They also previously had 7 small insects on tree leaves. As a result of wind blowing, the leaves fell into a lake. Then, in the middle of the lake, there was an ancient stupa, a very old stupa. As a result of the wind's movement, gradually they circumambulated 7 times. These small insects also wouldn't have had the joy of circumambulation, but gradually they circumambulated 7 times. Later they became the first 7 to ordain in Tibetan areas, the 7 men for testing. Their virtue at the beginning also came like this. Some people say the beginning of Srijata's virtue was when a person was being chased by a tiger and was extremely afraid. He climbed up a tree trunk and recited Namo Buddha. This virtue ripened. In any case, the beginning virtue is indeed very small. A kind of neutral virtue. We have indeed been reborn in Jambudvipa, a particularly supreme place in our hearts now. We can circumambulate stupas, we can circumambulate Buddha statues, we can circumambulate monasteries, and we have opportunities to prostrate to Buddha. Sometimes indeed, when thinking of these karmic connections, we are still extremely fortunate among the unfortunate. We can say that now, after obtaining such a human life, you often use prayer wheels. Everyone knows how much merit one turn brings. The merit of prostrating once before a golden gleaming Buddha statue is boundless. If you don't believe in karma, that's another matter. If you believe in karma, creating this kind of virtue once is truly, truly vast. So the Buddha's compassionate power has brought us Buddha Dharma, and now we ourselves also having such opportunity is extremely supreme. Furthermore, there's also this saying, through relying on one clay statue, 3 people attained Buddhahood. What does this mean? Previously, a person saw a small clay statue by the roadside, what we often call a tisatsa statue. This person thought in his heart, if this small clay statue is left like this, it will quickly be ruined by rainwater. I can't let it be destroyed like this. Therefore, looking left and right, he discovered a discarded shoe sole in front. We Tibetans probably made shoe soles from grass, not necessarily the current type of shoe sole. Because one person had generated very good intention, made a clay statue and placed it there, he hadn't thought about rain and left it there. Another person came and saw this would soon be destroyed by rainwater. Then, seeing there was this shoe sole, his mind was very pure. He also hadn't thought that you can't put a shoe sole on top of a Buddha statue's head. Then he placed the shoe sole on top of the Tiesatsa statue. He covered the small clay statue with the shoe sole and left. Then another person came out and saw this scene. He thought, one person made this clay statue very good, great, merit. But how is it that another person put an unclean shoe sole on top of the Tsatsa statue? He considered this dirty shoe sole covering the small clay statue to be bad, so he threw the shoe sole away, flung it off the person who covered with the shoe sole and the person who threw away the shoe sole because their intention was extremely pure virtue. On the surface, it seems one put a shoe sole on a Buddha statue and another person threw it away. This way it's very contradictory. Which one has merit? If we look from a materialist viewpoint, one person puts this on top, one person throws this away. When you examine these two actions, surely either both have merit or both have no merit, because they're completely contradictory. It's impossible for both to have merit. But because their minds were very virtuous, both were to protect the clay statue. So later they obtained, because their intentions were particularly virtuous. Later both obtained royal positions. So the verses also teach, with good intention, placing a shoe sole on the crown of the able one Buddha. Another person again discarded it. Both obtained royal positions. Both obtained it through this merit, one virtuous mind doing one good deed, later becoming kings. So now whether national leaders or many people who obtain royal positions, these are not particularly difficult. Doing a little bit of virtuous deeds, one can become president. So initially the person who made the small clay statue, in the middle the person who covered with the shoe sole, and finally the person who threw away the shoe sole, these three people. Isn't this what was said before? One small clay statue, three people attained Buddhahood. These three people temporarily obtained royal positions and other happy fruits of higher realms, ultimately planted seeds of liberation, and gradually attained Buddhahood. Therefore, when we do a virtuous deed, we should also. Many people, as long as their minds are virtuous, can indeed do this. For example, one person creates a Buddha statue. This is very good. Then creates a Buddha statue. One person thinks, oh, this Buddha statue probably still needs an ornament placed outside. One person thinks, oh, with such a good Buddha statue, I want to circumambulate. One person thinks, oh, I want to offer a flower in front of this Buddha statue. One person offers a stick of incense. Actually, with one Buddha statue, many people can form virtuous connections with it. So sometimes when I go to some monasteries in Han regions, indeed, the creators of merit adorned sacred statues and monasteries. Everyone forms virtuous connections and also has certain merit. Gradually, everyone forms such good virtuous connections. The merit of staying away from non-virtue is also the same. If from the heart, with greatest devotion and reverence, one takes refuge in the three jewels, then all the negative karma created in the past will also be lightened and may even be completely exhausted. The Sutra of the Deva who took refuge in the three jewels and was saved from the lower realms. There is such a sutra there was a Deva who discovered. Because celestial beings have clairvoyance, he saw that in his next life he would become a pig in Rajagriha. Then he was particularly saddened. Seeing his future destination was so filthy and vile, he was particularly saddened and ran to Indra. He went to Indra, asking if there was any way, I'm about to become a pig in the next life. What can I do? Then Indra said, you should properly take refuge in the three jewels. Take refuge in Buddha, take refuge in Dharma, take refuge in Sangha. Then he began taking refuge in the three jewels. After taking refuge in the three jewels, he died. After dying, Indra couldn't see him no matter how he used his clairvoyance to observe, because generally heavenly kings can't see above, they can only see below. Later he wondered why, after taking refuge in the three jewels, he couldn't see him below. Then he ran to the Buddha to ask, "Where did my deva go?" Then the Buddha observed and said he was reborn in Tushita heaven. Because of the merit of taking refuge in the three jewels, he was above him, and he didn't know. So when we take refuge in the three jewels, the merit is truly great. We absolutely must not think, what's the point of getting a refuge certificate? What's the point of taking refuge in the three jewels? Absolutely don't underestimate it. The Buddha taught in the Sutra of Questions by Indra only Buddha, the world-honored one, is the great teacher of the world, skillfully subduing the great army of demons, able to liberate all sentient beings. Only the Buddha can subdue all demonic hosts and liberate all sentient beings. From then on, the mind stream will also receive the great compassionate blessings of the three jewels. All actions will become virtuous dharma, and one will no longer create negative karma. For example, as recorded in the Buddhist sutras, King Ajatasattu killed his own biological father, but later wholeheartedly took refuge in the three jewels. As a result, he merely experienced 7 days of hell suffering and then attained liberation. King Ajatasattu. When he was not yet born, fortune tellers said he would harm you in the future. At that time his father was particularly angry. He threw him down from a high building, threw him down right after he was born. As a result, due to karmic connections from past lives, he didn't die. It seems only one finger was damaged. Later, he committed one of the 5 heinous acts, killing his own father. But later, because he sincerely took refuge in the three jewels, some sutras say he endured 7 days of hell suffering and immediately attained liberation. Some sutras say originally he fell into the black line hell, but after he took refuge in the three jewels, in a very short time, he immediately attained liberation. There are various accounts. In any case, he was a person who committed the 5 heinous acts. King Ajatasattu later in the Saptaparni cave. After the Buddha's parinirvana, he was also a benefactor of the compilation. It also mentions Devadatta. Devadatta committed 3 of the 5 heinous acts, causing schism in the Sangha, causing the Buddha's body to bleed, killing an Arhat Devadatta in one sutra. Just causing Buddha's blood to flow happened several times. Once was making a drunken elephant charge toward Buddha Shakyamuni. Once it seems he offered poison to the Buddha Bhagavan, poison that would kill immediately upon contact. Such poison was also offered to the Buddha Bhagavan. And several other times Devadatta committed 3 of the 5 heinous acts, when he was experiencing hellfires burning his body while still alive. Only then did he have sincere faith in Buddha's words without doubt, and said, "From now on, I take refuge in Buddha from the depths of my heart." At that time, the Buddha said, "Taking refuge in Buddha, just taking refuge in me won't work. You should take refuge in Dharma and take refuge in Sangha." Later, he also repeated again. Because he spoke this way from the depths of his heart, from his bones and marrow, he took refuge in Buddha from his heart. In the future, he will become a Pratyeka Buddha, not a perfect enlightenment called utterly determined. Some sutras say he'll be called Namo Pratyeka Buddha. But this is what Hinayana and individual sutras say about Devadatta's relationship with Buddha. The Lotus Sutra specifically has a chapter of Devadatta which teaches, the Buddha said, "When I was in the causal ground, he was also my spiritual teacher. I attained accomplishment by relying on him. Whoever hears the chapter of Devadatta will not fall into the 3 lower realms." It also teaches many merits. It's a kind of manifestation of Buddha. From some Mahayana definitive sutras, it's also like this. But what we're teaching here is that King Ajatasattu, who committed the 5 heinous acts after sincerely taking refuge in Buddha, didn't fall into hell. Even if he fell after 7 days, he immediately attained liberation, and Devadatta also committed 3 of the 5 heinous acts. When he also sincerely took refuge in Buddha, he also attained liberation. So we Dharma friends present here, of course, the karma we may have created before probably wasn't the 5 heinous acts, but in this life we may have created much bad negative karma. So for this negative karma, you should repent from your heart. You must definitely, before the supports of the 3 jewels, from your heart, I begin to take refuge in Buddha, take refuge in Dharma, take refuge in Sangha. Continuously contemplate silently and recite. Especially this time when we practice refuge, Everyone should sometimes visualize the refuge field. Sometimes just think in your mind, I've created so much negative karma before. Obtaining a human life is extremely difficult. This time, I must definitely take refuge from my heart, because we have both superficial voice and inner voice. So when we recite Namo Guru Be, that verse from before, everyone should use their inner voice, and some literary scholars call this the voice of the heart. When we recite refuge, don't use superficial verbal voice. What is verbal voice called? In poetics, what is it called? What do you call superficial voice? Oh, whoever answers well, I'll give a reward. Inner voice, voice from the heart, is called the voice of the heart. We can say that, right? You've studied for so many years and can't even express this. Wow, how many years have you studied? Think about it. In any case, when we take refuge in the 3 jewels from our hearts, reciting 100,000 times, everyone must definitely recite with this kind of attitude. In this way, after we practice refuge, true refuge will arise in our mind streams after it arises from the perspective of merit, looking at the various sutras and instructions above. No matter how serious the karma created before, in the future one will not fall into the 3 lower realms. Even if one falls, the time will be very brief. This is Buddha's words, as I just said. If a person faithfully takes refuge in Buddha, the Tathagata does not deceive. The reason is also like this. Therefore, everyone should have this confidence. Today, I think I'll teach up to here.
Bandara Badma Asadarda Bandara Badma Asada Bandara Badma Asadarda